I think you can just apply that same thing to business and you will be unstoppable. That's the mindset of an entrepreneur and a franchisee.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind Their Success podcast. I'm Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Lance Hood. Lance is an entrepreneur, former MMA fighter, and a franchise consultant. He helps people break free from the 9-to-5 by building wealth through franchise ownership. As the managing member of ARC Franchising, Lance has helped new and existing entrepreneurs find their ideal business match. Lance, good morning. Welcome on Behind Their Success.
Thanks, Peyton. It's wonderful to be here and spend this time with you. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely, Lance, man. Excited to talk. Tell me a little bit about just kind of what you do. You're in the franchising space.
Yeah, I was actually used to produce a lot of shows, kind of like what you're doing. A lot of coaches were on there and people were buying programs. And I just was looking for something to help people get started into business and actually make something happen. And found franchising, and it just seemed like a great way to have a structured way for people to do stuff. So been doing it a long time now. I really enjoy it. I was always that person that, if you saw pictures of me when I was like just this young guy, I always had a notepad and a pen. I was on the couch jotting down business ideas while everybody else is like doing stuff to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
and always doing that. I grew up in a family business and I always had ideas. I just always loved business, not entrepreneurship. And it just seemed like if I could spend my time talking to people about stuff like this, helping people out, it's awesome. And that's how I got into franchising. You have these people. It's a big decision for some people. It's I have people in the housing market go, the house is the most expensive thing you'll get. Well, unless you're getting a business, then the bill might be. It's a big decision. So that's what I got into it. And so I really spend my time now just interviewing existing entrepreneurs, people that want to be an entrepreneur, and making sure that you get in the right place.
Yeah. The franchising model is kind of interesting. I don't have tons and tons of experience. I know it being an accountant and stuff by trade and work with tons of entrepreneurs. I know a little bit about it. Can you kind of just tell us like what kind of typical entrepreneur or like what kind of situations do you see those things like fit well for?
Well, it's great that you said that because not everybody is really cut out to be a franchisee. Like you'd have people saying, "Oh, well, anyone can do it." Well, if they're just trying to help you get into a franchise, but
you're trying to sell franchise,
right? But it's like there's a mindset where I used to think of it. It was franchising was buying a business, and that's what most people think. But I really, from talking and working with people who are very successful, it really seems like they view it as leverage. You are getting this system. You're not out there trying to make your own thing. You're doing something that is structured, that makes money. And these people that are really successful, it's almost like they use the franchise system to help them produce money. And they don't care what it is as long as it works and it gives them lifestyle and the system can help train their employees. They're just utilizing it as a member of their team versus trying to do their own thing. So if you are someone who you really want to be super creative, some brands, you might have some flexibility to do that. But the more older and established the brand gets, they want you to follow the system. So you have to have that. You're working with a franchise company is something that it's more of a partnership. And that's when people go to look at buying one, they generally go, I don't want to get sold anything. So, they think of it like buying a house or a car or a timeshare. But this is a partnership. So when they talk with you, you're both vetting each other because, you're going to represent the brand and it could be a train wreck if there's things in place and you're not willing to do it, and follow the system. So there is this thing about making sure that it's a good fit, not just having you get started.
I can imagine that entrepreneurs in general sometimes go into those franchises and don't necessarily follow the system, right? Or they start bucking the trends and entrepreneurs are fairly independent, right? And they want to kind of do their things their own way, but that is the complete opposite of what the franchising model is even supposed to do, right? Like ideally, I guess, right? Like if I was looking to buy a franchise, it would be, hey, what's something I could park money into? Like think I'm buying an asset, right? That's going to just self-contain and compound and spit out money that, me as an entrepreneur don't really need to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. Well, couple things there. One is when you think of a biz op, you think of something that's kind of like inexpensive and tiny, like a little, like I'm going to do. But there are things that should be a franchise, but they've just decided to change the model slightly. And so they are a full-fledged, they're a biz op, but they're at the level of a franchise. So in that situation, you can actually name it yourself, run it yourself, and there is no ongoing royalties or anything. They're just getting you into business. But so it's a cool model for the right people. There's less of those. And when it comes to like investments, there are a few companies that have set it up to where it is kind of an investment. But there's very few of those because it's hard to make things run so smooth that you can do that. A lot of companies are looking for an owner operator. And if you are going to have it be an investment, generally you're going to make less profit because you're either utilizing people to do the work or machines to do the work. Like machines could be washing machines, So that means that there's less money for you, but you're also putting in far less time. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, and I could see somebody, like I'd say some of my more successful entrepreneurs, and that's how they would probably approach an idea like this. But of course, at the same time, I mean, if you want to not be involved in that franchise, well, you better have a lot of systems in place and people working for you and whatnot, even, outside of that system, to help you manage that and kind of keep that arm's length away from it if you don't want to be involved in it, right? But then at the same time, yeah, owner operators, man, like if you don't, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't know what to do or what to figure out or what business model even go into, franchising can be an interesting opportunity, right? Like, they hand you a model that they have proven and redesigned and continually tweaked, but they hand you a model and says, hey, if you just do this, you should make X, right? But sometimes I like I said, this is my assumption, but I assume a lot of people sometimes come in there and have a hard time actually following what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, well, I look at it like the franchise is a car. It's just this parked car. The franchisor is like the coach with the headset that's talking to you and telling you how to make the most of this while you're driving. You're the driver. So if you get the franchise and you have this car and you have this coach and you just sit there, it doesn't go anywhere or do anything. So you're the operator, and people forget, they think of it like an investment where I put money into the stock market. Other people are doing the work. I just need to know when to put it in and when to pull it out. But that's not the way it is with the business. You actually have to operate it, or you have to have a team under you that you're still leading and making sure they're effective. So, 100%, you really are the biggest driver. It's not that you have a brand, because think about it. If you have a really amazing race car driver and you put them in like a Hyundai, they can tear the wheels off that thing. And then if you get somebody that has like a Ferrari and they're just a bonehead,
neither one of those is going to work.
Yeah. So people forget that you have a big part of it. So that's why I spend a lot of time trying to understand the habits and mindsets of the top performers.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And it's probably, it's really important for the the people actually, I guess the company selling the franchises, right? I mean, that should be the big vetting that they're doing, right? It's like, hey, do you have the mindset, some of the skills and abilities to actually effectively, like represent my brand, right? I'm sure franchises have different levels of vetting when that comes in, and like you said, the more established, big brand names, they're going to check you out big time, right? They don't want just some bonehead sitting in their Ferrari and making it look bad.
Well, and it also affects all the other existing franchisees because you're putting kind of a thing on the brand. Everybody wants those top 10% performers. Yep. Nobody's hoping to go, if we could just get one of those bottom 10%.
One of those average guys.
Yeah. And the thing is people go, well, why do these franchises always want to offer me like multiple units when you have a semi-passive model where you can have multiple units? And I'm like, it's really simple. It benefits everybody. If you're going to have 100 locations across the US, would you rather have 100 people with one location making the level of income you get from one location and all that? Or would you rather have 10 people with 10 locations? With that, you have less support, because how many people do they have to support 10 people versus 100? And how much money are the people with 10 units? They're more committed. They're different caliber of person. So the reason they're always looking for those multi-unit owners, and those people are committed. So they're always
all in.
Yep. So single unit owners are good. and many brands will work with them, but some are really looking for that high caliber, highly committed person. It's just better all the way around for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, it's easier on them. It's easier on the owners. Like they can, the companies themselves can control the owners to more degree, or know that, hey, man, we are really married here. We got 10 McDonald's or whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're committed and we're married here together for sure. So, Lance, give us a little bit about kind of your background and how you got into entrepreneurship. You were talking about, as a kid, you were really into it. Looks like you got into some MMA and stuff. Tell us just kind of a little bit more about you and your journey a little bit.
Sure. Well, those are kind of two different topics. With business, I started, I grew up in a family business. And so I was the little kid out there as my family. My grandfather was a B-17 pilot in World War II, and he came back from helping to save the world and to his family's chicken hatchery. So just raising up chicks and selling them to farmers, and then the bottom went out of that. So then they raised they raised them up for meat, and they're like, and then the bottom fell out of that, and then they're like, oh, gosh, what do we do? So they're like, they found a noodle press, which you'd see today for like $26 at a grocery store, but that was a big deal back then. They bought it and they started making noodles with the eggs, and then they started selling it at the grocery store, and then they turned that into like I don't know what it was, $25 million business a year.
Wow.
And
All from the noodles press.
yeah, just starting from their basement. And the family ended up selling that business to our largest competitor, who was a publicly traded company. And it came in, and I don't know if the people were ornery, if they were just tired of being beat for all those years by us, but it was a toxic environment. And at the time, I was kind of shifting from, I was a bodybuilder, and then I was like, so what do I do with all this? Can I fight? And so I started, I had taken martial arts, and I started getting more into things that had an element of combat to just see. So I started judo. I started Hapkido and stuff, and I started judo, and then jujitsu, and then MMA, and then competing. And I was gonna do it for a living, but the problem was, at the time, you win some of these events, you walk home with $300, and that's
In the face beater.
plus the orbit bone in your eye.
Medical expenses maybe a little higher now.
Yeah. And I had a wife and two young daughters, and so I was like, you know what? I ended up having to leave the plant because it was an aggressive situation, and it just wasn't good for me or anybody else, because I was about to get upset.
You might have to brute that jujitsu out on some room guys.
Yeah, I had visions in my head.
Yeah, I'm sure you went over it a couple times.
Yeah, and I went home one day because the last day I was there, and the funny thing was, we were told, me and the other leadership were told by my uncles who were selling it, that, hey, listen, we're no longer the owners, and we're not going to handle any guff if you guys mess up. So it all runs downhill, and we're not going to save you. And I'm like, oh, geez. Okay. Right. So it's like, we were on our own. So, okay. But the last day is they were going to I was already working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m, 5 days a week. And I was told that I had to come back at 9 p.m. at night and work till whenever, which meant I was only going to get like 4 hours. I was mandatory, being ordered to only get 4 hours of sleep a day, and be at work 12 plus, I don't know, like 16 hours. Like, I'm like, can't do that. I felt my temper, and I was just like, you know what? I'm out of here. So I left. I walked out, and my wife's like, you got to go put your 2 weeks in. I said, no, I'm not. I said, first of all, I already quit. I said, second of all, I'm never going to be hired by anyone ever again. I'm going to start my own companies. I am never going to work for a person. I'm never going to do office politics. And then I had to just figure it out. And the first thing was, I worked with a buddy, and we developed a real estate business where we acquired farmland on the edge of small towns near the big city. And then we were flipping them and zoning them and everything for developers. And, in 9 months, I turned that into way back then, I turned it into like $183,000 paycheck for myself. So
Yeah,
it worked out pretty good. And then I didn't really want to do that my whole life. So I started going back to my things, which was personal development, kind of like you. You're like personal development stuff. I was reading those books all the time, and I was the guy that if you had a problem or something, I had read the book and I just
Yeah.
gave you a copy of the book, and nobody wanted the book. You know?
I'm just saying, way I hand people books all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
And
like,
they're like,
"No,
yeah, they're not gonna read it. But so I was like, I thought I'll just interview the people that write these books, and that'll be
Sure.
fun. And I had a good time. We had turned it into a very successful company. I was nervous, and so I was like, I'm just going to do 3 interviews a week, so I don't have a chance to get I don't have a chance to get uncomfortable. I'll just
Yeah,
do
freaked
it.
out or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
jump when you do it, man.
yeah. And then I did that, and I think I did 183, almost, or 200-ish interviews in a year and a half. Right. And I was like, well, you know what? Let's scale this up. So I got about 5 hosts, and I produced other people. And I say 1,000, but the partner that helped me do it, he goes, Lance, he goes, we probably did thousands. But the biggest challenge with that was you ever buy a book and not read it?
Yeah, I mean, everybody does.
Or read it and not apply it? That's what I
Oh,
found.
yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah. I found that in the coaching industry where they would buy expensive coaching, but then they wouldn't show up to calls.
Never implement it. Yep.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I need to do something else. And that's how I transitioned out of the thing where we were doing, those calls and producing calls and offering people coaching into franchising. Cause I was like, you know what? You vet it, the consultant vets it, the bank's vetting it, and you're being forced to get open in 6 or 12 months. Like, you have to do it. So I was like, this is how we can help people actually take action. I can't control the result because they're the driver, and how you approach this new experience, adventure, and adversity is up to you. It's not really something that people can control. 2 people with the same opportunity will handle it different.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. What you were saying there made me think about, I kind of studied under one of the top mindset coaches here in the United States over the last, I don't call it 12 months, but he talks about is like the dirty secret in like the coaching and in self-development space is like maybe only 1 to 2% of people will actually implement anything or do anything with all this great information. Right. And, as a person that's, lives in that world, tries to help people and, me myself, you gotta be okay with that or understand that, right? Like you can hand something to somebody so valuable, but they don't see that. They don't see the value, or they can't internally make those shifts to really even do anything with it.
It's just like with the weight loss, in fitness industries, people have this vision of what they want. They get excited because they're like, I want this, I'm going to do this. But then when reality sits in, the day-to-day, that's why bodybuilding was such a big change, because it is everyday commitment for small gains, and every day is a pain to get those gains. If somebody has that experience with bodybuilding, I think you can just apply that same thing to business, and you will be unstoppable. You just keep tweaking and adjusting and staying committed and accepting your results, not putting any situation on anybody else. Just here's it is. I'll do whatever I need to do to make this happen. That's the mindset of an entrepreneur and a franchisee.
Yeah, and it's true, man. When you talk about bodybuilding and whatnot, and I'm not like a competitive bodybuilder by any means, but like I've dedicated I don't say last 5 years I go to the gym 5-6 days a week. I credit that habit as being one of the best things that's ever helped my career. And it really is just it's the daily grind, right? It's the daily grind and understanding that everything you do daily compounds, right? In the smallest things. If you go to the gym every day and do these little gains, and from day to day, you notice absolutely nothing, right? And you're with yourself all the time. So you really don't even notice the gains, right? Or like physically, you got to try to measure them or whatnot. But like it's getting to the point where you trust the process, or even better, enjoy the process, right? I knew that I had figured out my workout routine when I enjoyed the process, right? When I started enjoying going to the gym, I was like, okay, I finally figured this out, right? It was not me at the gym trying to achieve some results. It was the gym in of itself that gave me the satisfaction. And that's when you win.
That's when it sticks, right?
Yeah. It's finally beat in your head and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I remember when I am no longer a bodybuilder. I've become a busy entrepreneur dad.
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
But I do get down. My whole basement is a mat, half a mat room and half's a weight room. So,
Sure.
and I get that look from my wife, like, you should get down there.
Yeah, and I think it's just such a great training ground for entrepreneurs like the gym,
Mm,
right? Because it's like a microcosm of everything you kind of experience, in your business, right? Of failure and running into plateaus and all these things, right? And the gym is just like a great training ground, even more so way in my opinion, way more so for your mind than your body, right? Because your mind really starts to understand the process of getting better, right? And that little bit, constantly, little bit better every day. And then you look back over 5 years, and yeah, I'm in way better shape than I was 5 years ago. Like you can't even compare the two. But that took 5 years of consistent
mhm.
work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how are you going to grow muscle without enduring some pain?
Yeah,
Because if you just do it irregularly, it doesn't accumulate. And if you do it moderately, it's going to take a while and it never will reach its full potential. If you're able to dig in and go through that pain in the gym and really understand what your workouts are and accomplishing, you can have, pretty amazing results. I've seen results consistently with daily commitment in 90 days. Like, people be shocked what you can do in 90 days with a commitment, but not if you let off the gas during that time, or you go beyond your capabilities and break
yeah,
something.
for sure. Yeah. There's a difference between stretching yourself, right? Constantly stretching yourself. Like think when you're stretching your hamstrings or whatever, right? You're just constantly pushing that. Big difference between that and like, bending over real fast and pulling your hamstring and, creating trauma, right? It's a huge difference. We constantly want to stretch, but not stretch so much you just ripped your hamstring in half, right? Because that's trauma, right? And that's going to take some time to get over. It's those little things, right? It's the accumulation of a lot of little things.
Yep, 100%. You can apply all that stuff to your own
Yeah, yeah,
business, like you
yeah.
probably do on a daily
But
basis.
yeah, yeah, it's just showing up every day. In my world, it's going through the meetings, it's sending all the emails, communicating with all the clients, and it's just doing those tiny little things day after day after day after day, and not getting bored with that. Because that I think is the biggest problem, or one of entrepreneurs' biggest problems, is they start down that track and they just get bored. And they finally get something kind of set up and moving and going, but then they get bored and jump off to the next thing, and whatever they finally got set up and going just kind of dies because they got bored of it and don't want to do it anymore. Just like the gym, right? Like that person works out the first 3 weeks of January, and then maybe they get sick one time, or it's just like, this is boring, I don't see any results yet because I've only been here for 3 weeks, and they just get bored and give up, and like, well, I guess this just isn't for me because it doesn't work, right? They're 3 weeks into January. You don't realize if you wouldn't have given up in January and you would have made it to May, you could have had those amazing results. But the thing is, you found some reason to go back to your old behavior and just quit.
Yeah, I think, really the thing that makes a difference is people not focusing on their environment. Your environment supports your vision. So let's just say we're not talking about business right now, we're talking about like bodybuilding. If you surround your constant awareness, like when I was fighting, the reason that when I first transitioned from like judo, jujitsu into MMA, I was no good because I didn't have that gi, like that outfit that people wear. Because I was used to grabbing it and holding on to it and doing stuff. Well, when you go into MMA, there's nothing to grab onto. People wearing t-shirts, whatnot, or no shirt, and so I was useless at first, and
Yeah.
that was like traumatizing to me because I was used to being in charge. And so I just started watching. I probably at some points, and my wife, I just am so thankful for her. I was probably watching 2 hours of video a day. I was training 2 hours a day, and I was thinking about it when I was sleeping. I would wake up and think of things and write them down, like, oh, I could do this joke like this. And then even when I was at work, I was thinking about it. So that concentrated application and thought process, it didn't allow me to change. So if your thing is fitness or working out, if you keep your environment to support it and your mindset focused on it, it becomes something like a puzzle you're figuring out and something that excites you. If it's a business, if you stay in that environment, that's why I think the franchise industry is so good, because at first you're getting help from the franchisor, but you make fast friends with the people in the
Yeah.
franchisee
The other
circuit,
ones. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
those become your buddies. They're in your cell phone, and if you guys really keep working on solving the problem, you become successful. If you get in a group where you're just like, woe is me, that's where your results are going to be, because your focus is there. So your focus gets you results in whatever direction you focus, positive or negative.
100%, man. And you talk about environment there. I know I saw a stat the other day and I kind of posted about it, but it was like the number one stat like correlated with how wealthy, like you take a group of children and project into the future, like how wealthy somebody's going to be, and this makes people very uncomfortable. But like the most highly correlated stat is their zip code. Their zip code is the best predictor of where they end up with money. Now, statistically speaking, obviously any individual can do anything, but and I think a lot of that comes down to environment, right? I mean, it literally is in the environment the kids grow up in, right? You may grow up in an inner city where there's not a lot of opportunity, and you don't even, owning a franchise that's like on Mars, right? Like that's not even a possibility. You don't know anybody. No one in your circle, your life, your world has done anything like that. Now, if you grow up in a nice suburban neighborhood, everybody on your streets, business owners, your parents are business owners. Well, that's normal, right? Like that is just normal to you. And it's so true. You can look at wealth, you can look at anything, but it's really surrounding yourself with people that are doing what you want to do, that will support that vision, right? And keep you on track. Because like we're all just dumb humans, I want to say. Like as in like we're biological animals and we are subject to so many things that we, our brains like to think we're just these amazing beings that are all intellectual and we all make our own free will choices and whatnot. A lot of it's really just our environment. And we are affected by it so much more than we give it credit for. So taking that information is get around people and places that absolutely support your dreams and show you that that stuff is possible. The biggest thing I've done in my life in the last few years is getting in rooms with entrepreneurs that are way ahead of me and have way bigger businesses than me, and getting to know them and being like, wow, this guy's awesome. He's quote unquote nothing special. I mean, the reason I say that is because like, hey, he's just like me. If he could do it, why can't I do it? And that just shows me that like, okay, you don't have to be some crazy entrepreneur or something to be this level of success. It's just figuring things out.
Mm-hmm. You become like the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And so some people you got to weed it out and you got to add new people and people that'll push you. If you are the top person in your circle, you're not going to grow. You're enjoying being the top person. So definitely find those people. And I think like you talk about people who might be in the wrong zip code. Well, one of the things to do is that stuff is where you are, but it's not where you're going to be. And there's almost always an example of somebody who had a harder time and made it. And if you can hitch onto that, connect with that person, follow their lead, you can do that. Or if you don't find that, then you can say, you know what? I'm writing my story right now, and I am going to be the one. I'm going to be the one. And you commit to living, because you're living out your story every day, whether you are doing nothing or you are going after it. You're living your story. So, and you get it right at one time. I would make the most of it, because that's the thing when people are at the end of their life, when they interview these people, I wish I would have tried that. I wish I would have done that. I was just too comfortable. I didn't push myself. I just did what was normal and easy.
What was required. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Like, and I remember talking to my father-in-law when he was in his mid-50s, when I first married my wife, and he was just like, I think it's so cool that you're an entrepreneur and you do this, and I have friends that do that, and I just always say it was cool, and I always wished I would have. And I said, you're 55, and he's like, he's like, no. I was like, my grandpa was 55 when the noodle factory business, he started that thing. So it's like, and he passed away a multi-millionaire. And it's like, you are here, you can still do something. You see people like a Bob Proctor talking, you can do it now. You just have to stay committed and get through the confusing, hard, difficult part of getting it working properly, because everything you do, it's going to be messy at first and hard, and it can be frustrating. And if you just stop when it's there, you'll never see the other side. And all these people that do, they're no more special than you. They just wrote it out.
They just didn't quit. I mean, that is so true. Like everybody I talk to on this podcast, every one of us have been through tons of crap, right? I mean, everybody goes through tons of crap in their life. And it's the people that just didn't quit. They're willing to just stand there, take the punches, and keep walking towards whatever that goal is. And, it's amazing. The world, you have a will like that, a will to get to a certain place. It is amazing how much the world will eventually just get out of your way if you're just constant and relentless towards some aim.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would think that I had a lot of motivation when I was younger. The reason that I got into bodybuilding was because I was the second smallest kid in my class, and I was in 8th grade, and I was normal in height. Like I was maybe even slightly above normal in height. But as far as physically, I remember we had the president's physical fitness test, and
I remember that. Yep.
I couldn't even bench press the empty bar. And so they put me on this like a piece of equipment, and I could barely push up the thing with a 10-pound weight in it. So you lay on your back and you do the bench press, right? I could barely do it with a 10-pound weight. I was so skinny when I started that my belly stuck out further than my chest, and I was skinny. Through 2.5 years later, I was top of my class. I, was 175 at bench press and 275. And it was just I got so fed up of being so weak. And at the time, it made me insignificant. In fact, one guy was messing with me, and another guy threatened to beat him up because I can't believe you're picking on Hood, because I was that skinny.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, thank you for that, but wow.
Like, oh man.
Yeah.
You like what made you different? Most kids in your situation, they would have got put in a tough situation there, and they would have got out of that situation, right? They would have left or done whatever. You were willing to be humble enough to be there and to do the work, right? And to figure out, somebody probably took pity on you or whatnot, or you just figured out and learned, okay, here's how I go from being the weakest kid in class to, the strongest kid or what have you, right? But like, you have to be humble enough to sit in there and do that, because you weren't benching 275 a week later, right? Like you still the weakest kid in the class for a while there, right? And you were willing to be humble, have everybody make fun of you while you were taking those steps, right?
Yep. And if I wasn't working out, I was reading a magazine. I could tell you all the supplements at the time. And that's all I did every single minute of every day. And I think it's that sustained focus on whatever your goal is. If you bring your environment, if everything that is an input, if you're watching videos online and you're not getting anything done, those videos better be something that is telling you how to get to your final goal, because then it's actually useful to you, because, it's leading you in that direction. But if you're just entertaining yourself, you're not going to hit any sort of goal that you're looking for. You need to stop the entertainment and focus on what's important to you.
Yeah. People say like knowledge is power. That's kind of true. But really, I think knowledge is potential power, right? You can sit there and read all the books, watch all the YouTube videos. We're in a world now where you can get access to amazing entrepreneurs and their advice and their speeches. And I do a lot of that, where I'm just sitting here working and I have, a speech on YouTube or whatever from, somebody cool that I like and whatnot. But like, if you're not doing anything with it, that's all it is potential power, right? Like, it's potential until you actually take some sort of action and implement.
Yeah. And that's where kind of the name ARC franchising comes from. Because when I looked at everything I had ever done in the past and all the businesses that we'd ever done, the two most successful things that led to the success of those businesses was applied research and collaboration. That's where ARC comes from. Applied research and collaboration.
I really like that applied research collaboration. I like that a lot. And it really is like where I was a little slow on was on the C, because I did for the first, I don't know, 6, 7 years of my business, I basically operated all in isolation by myself, stupidly. Now I realize, wow, there's all these people out here that I can collaborate with and use as leverage, and they use me, and we could be resources. And well, amazingly enough, you can get a whole lot more time when you actually do that. So yeah, I mean, that collaboration piece is massive. Lance, man, this has been a fantastic conversation. What's the best way people can kind of get to know more about you, follow you, or get to know more about ARC Franchise?
Well, I could say you could go to my LinkedIn, which is Lance Hood, ARC Franchising. You can go to my website, ARC Franchising. But I think something very interesting is this. One of the things that I've spent a lot of time recently is helping businesses with applying not what you would consider your typical, like, the word AI has become something that has become commoditized or generalized in people's minds. They think everything is everything. And until you meet something that is outstanding, you have no idea. And so I have my personal assistant, Ashley. The best way to find out about franchising or me, or get all your questions answered, get into my schedule or anything, is to call Ashley. And you can call 515-417-3117 and experience Ashley, because she will answer all your questions. You'll be shocked, and help you learn anything you want to know about franchising.
That's amazing. So guys, call Ashley if you want to know about franchising. I love it.
She's awesome, and 24/7.
I love it, Rip. I love it. Lance, anything you want to leave? Anything else? Piece of advice for the listeners you want to leave for?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on this program, because this wouldn't happen if you hadn't put this show together in the first place and stuck it out, and then had me on. But I would just say that if you think that there might be, an opportunity for you that you're not taking the most advantage of, franchising isn't franchising. Just picking a random brand, you're never going to find the truth on the front page of Google. And what I mean is this: if you've ever put time and money into SEO to try to get yourself found across the whole country, you realize the amount of effort and dollars it takes to produce and get on page one. That's just sales and marketing bullets that are basically being pushed up there by professional marketing teams. The real information on a brand is when you talk to the brand, they have all the stuff they're not sharing with their competitors, the franchise disclosure document, and the franchisees. That's where the real information is. But finding the ones that make sense, you actually have to match it to your, I think, personality and your skills, because otherwise you're going to reject it. It's not going to be an environment that you're going to enjoy. So that's where it makes sense to have somebody who's looked at 900 of them and has a background in understanding psychology and business ownership, that can go, you know what, I think this wouldn't be good for you. I think you'd be more successful here. Love to have that conversation if it makes sense for you.
And yeah, that's, great advice. And the fact that, don't jump into something like that without understanding how you fit into that opportunity, right? From just an entrepreneur standpoint. And does this opportunity require your skills? Do you have the right skills for that opportunity, man? Lance, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on the show. And listeners, we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires, or going to PeytonSquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.